Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Happy Sunday. I hope everyone's day has begun very nicely. Thank you all for joining and for giving me a chance to purify my own consciousness by reading from Srimad Bhagavatam and from being in all your company. So we'll begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamutirayet. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashtapraya Shabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Yutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So I'll read the verse, and if anyone would care to join, you may do so. We're reading from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Creation, chapter 8, the prayers of Queen Kunti, and text 47. Aharaja dharma sutash chintayan suhridam badham prakriten atmana vipra sneha moha vasham gata. Aharaja dharma sutash chintayan suhridam badham prakriten atmana vipra sneha moha vasham gata. Aharajan dharma sutash chintayan suhridam badham prakriten atmana vipra sneha moha vasham gata.
Aharaja dharma shutas chintayan suhridam badham prakritetmatmana vipraha snehamoha vasham gataha.
Aharaja dharam shutas chintayan shudram suhridam vadam prakritenatmana vipra sneha moha vasham gata.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Prabhu. Very well.
Aharaja dharma sutta chintayan shru ridam vadam prakritenatmana vipra sneha moha vasam gata.
Thank you, Mataji.
Aharaja dharma sutas chintayan shuhradam vadam prakrutenatmana vipra sneha moha vasam gata.
Jai Prabhu. Thank you, dear devotees. Aha, said Raja, King Yudhishthira, Dharma Sutta, the son of Dharma, Yamaraj, Chintayan, thinking of, Suhridam, of the friends, Vadham, killing, Prakritena, by material conception only, Atmana, by the self, Vipraha, O Brahmana, Sneha, affection, Moha, delusion, Vasham, being carried away by, Gataha, having gone. The translation and purport given by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. King Yudhishthir, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. Purport. King Yudhishthir, though he was not expected to become aggrieved like a common man, became deluded by worldly affection by the will of the Lord, just as Arjuna was apparently deluded. A man who sees knows well that the living entity is neither the body nor the mind, but is transcendental to the material conception of life. The common man thinks of violence and non-violence in terms of the body, but that is a kind of delusion. Everyone is duty-bound, according to one's occupational duties. A kshatriya is bound to fight for the right cause, regardless of the opposite party. In such discharge of duty, one should not be disturbed by annihilation of the material body, which is only an external dress of the living soul. All this was perfectly known to Maharaj Yudhishthir, but by the will of the Lord, he became just like a common man because there was another great idea behind this delusion. The king would be instructed by Bhishma, as Arjuna was instructed by the Lord himself. Aharaja dharma sutash chintayan suhridam vadham prakritenatmana vipras neha moha vasham gataha. King Yudhishthir, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer him my respectful obeisances. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord who are just like desired trees that are capable of satisfying the desires of all living entities. So the context will begin from the macro and then go to the micro. So the context for those who are just joining is that Srimati Kunti Maharani has just offered her prayers to Lord Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra after the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, and the battle between the armies of the Kurus and the Pandavas was fought and resolved, with the Pandavas emerging victorious. And now that Krishna is leaving the battlefield, Kunti Maharani has offered her prayers, to which Krishna accepted. It is mentioned a few verses back that Krishna mildly smiled, which was, and Shukadeva Goswami, Sutta Goswami says that smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. So Krishna accepts the prayers of Kunti Maharani, but he continues to leave because he has somewhere else to go. And now Maharaj Yudhishthir is also going to implore Krishna to leave. It's mentioned that King Yudhishthir is Dharma Sutash. He's the son of Dharma. And so as the son of Dharma, Yudhishthir Maharaj, it's implied here, it's subtextual that Yudhishthir Maharaj should know what the proper behavior is. One general way of understanding dharma is duty or responsibility, but a more subtle way of understanding it is dharma refers to the property of a thing that a thing cannot live without violating its own existence. So liquidity for water, heat for fire, and service for the spiritual entity. Prabhupada gave the example that you cannot find an individual, a living entity, in all the three worlds that is not serving somehow. In our constitutional position, we're serving Krishna. In one of the primary rasas or devotional mellows of friendship or parenthood or conjugal, or we're serving the material world somehow. We're serving our stomachs at the very least by working at a job and getting food so that we can serve our stomach and quiet it down when it says, I'm so hungry. We're serving our partners by making them food, by making the bed, by cleaning the house. We're serving our pets by taking them out for a walk, by cleaning up after them. We're serving society by voting, by protesting or rallying, by we're serving the younger generation by instructing. We're serving our friends by giving kind words and listening, and we're serving our elders by honoring them and by following their instructions. So that's dharma. That's the service cannot be taken away from the soul. So one who is keen or knows the ways of dharma should know what the proper thing to do in every situation is, and no one knows better than Dharmaraj. And King Yudhishthira is his son. So there, Shukadeva Goswami, Sutta Goswami is contrasting now that though King Yudhishthira is the son of Dharma and he should know how to behave in every situation, he is overwhelmed by the death of his friends and he's aggrieved, just like a common materialistic man. In the first instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, after Krishna tells Arjuna that you have always existed and so have I, and so have all these kings. Naham. Krishna says, first, I have always existed. Never was there a time in which I did not exist, nor you, nor any of these kings. After Krishna establishes the first axiom of the bhakti philosophy, which is that the soul is always existing, Krishna takes it to what is the behavior now? Now that we know that the soul is always existing, what is the dharma in this particular situation? And Krishna says, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. Dhiras tatra means thus the wise person, or a dhira, one who is sober-minded, namuhyati, is not put in, and muhyati comes from the same root, moha. Muhyati means to be put into illusion. So a wise person is not put into illusion by the transference of body. In the same way that the living entity comes into this world in a baby body, and then it transfers through differentiation and all of the atomic transformations that are happening from second to second, week to week, year to year, that soul is already reincarnating into a different body, into a youth, into an old person, and eventually to their death, to another body. Because a wise person knows this, they're not aggrieved. And so this is referencing that verse that Prabhupada is referencing, that he's overwhelmed by the death of his friends, and so he's being put into illusion, just like a common materialistic man. Because the materialistic person considers they're seeing things from the bodily platform, which means that the way that the world appears to my senses right now is the very truth about what the world is. And so if I don't see the face of my lover, or the face of my father, or the face of my friends animated before me, that individual is dead, because the individual is the body. And so if the body's gone, that individual is dead. The materialistic platform equates the body to the identity, but the spiritual platform equates the identity to a spiritual, to consciousness. And through reason and through devotional service itself, primarily through devotional service, a person begins to experience that consciousness is not dependent on the material body or the material conditions of the body. But here, Prabhupada in his first sentence makes an interesting claim. He says, Yudhishthira was not expected to become aggrieved, but he was deluded by the will of the Lord, just as Arjuna was apparently deluded. Several times in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada mentions, for example, when Krishna says, because you're my friend, I'm telling you this. And it's understood that only very advanced souls are friends or see themselves as friends with the Supreme Soul. So a contradiction arises. Well, how is it that this person is so advanced that they see God as their friend, but they're so confused about basic spiritual matters? Now, basic to self-realized souls, not basic to me, for example. I mean, that's why this is so important, but it's not basic to me. But for wise people, this is basic. And so Srila Prabhupada explains that for a greater purpose, for the purpose of speaking the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna put his friend into delusion so that he could ask the right kinds of questions, so that Krishna could be inspired to speak the Bhagavad Gita. We could think, well, why doesn't Krishna ask, just why doesn't an actually deluded person do it? And look at the world around you. Are actual deluded people asking the right person for answers? When people are confused, I forgot which devotee mentioned, but he said that you can see the lines of authority in the material world when in movies, whenever someone is having a difficult time, or they're consternated because there's a problem at work or a problem at home, they go to a bar to drink and become more intoxicated and lose more consciousness. So that's the solution to life. The solution is never, how can I clarify my conscience? It's that the friction of the material world is so difficult to take. Let me numb my experience even more, because this degree is too sharp already. And it's seldom in a movie that you see that a person, it's almost like a very rare moment in a movie, and it's almost made fun of when somebody sits down to calm themselves. It's almost seen as like comical that, oh yeah, that's gonna do anything, that being calm, and that what to speak of actually having spiritual masters as characters in movies. So one reason why Krishna invites his friends is because his friends are reliable. You can rely on Krishna's friends to do the right thing. Even to be deluded in the right way, you can rely on Krishna's friends. So Arjuna is reliable even in his delusion. And so, as we will see, so is Yudhishthira Maharaj. And the next chapter, the passing away of Bhishmadev, you will see that, the Krishna's friends and devotees can even be relied upon in death. Bhishmadev is on his deathbed and he still speaks the most eloquent philosophy ever, to show everyone. Actually, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami said in a very wonderful class that the purpose of our lives should be to die like Bhishmadev. Actually, he might be quoting Srila Prabhupada in saying that leaving the body with that clear consciousness of who we are, of the truth of what the body is, and being in front of Krishna, seeing him as our great Lord and great friend, that is kind of the perfection of life. So that Bhishma Dev's instructions can be given, Yudhishthira Maharaj is being put into delusion, just as for the Bhagavad Gita to be spoken, Arjuna was put into delusion. I just read a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where it said that, get the direct quote. It's about the glories of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Krishna kripalu arjunere lakshya kariya jagatere rakya chena upadesha diya Krishna is so merciful that simply by aiming his instructions at Arjuna, he has given protection to the whole world. So that simply by speaking the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has saved the whole world. By codifying all of the Vedas into 700 verses. So Krishna, but you see that Krishna does this multiple times. Says, just in case the Bhagavad Gita doesn't work, for someone who's interested in the other parts of the Mahabharata, let's have, Bhishma Dev. Well, actually, the Mahabharata records a different part of Bhishma Dev's instructions than the Srimad Bhagavatam, but still the purpose is one. So I'd like to speak now about this last line of verse 47, Sneha Moha Vasham Gataha. So Sneha is translated as affection, and Moha is translated as delusion. So who can say, who remembers a part in the Bhagavad Gita very early on that relates these two things, or these two ideas of attachment and illusion? Does anyone remember? I'll give you a hint. It's in the second chapter. That might be too vague. So the verse is where Krishna is describing how a person falls into the material world. Krishna says, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. From anger, complete delusion arises. And the word that Krishna uses is samohat. So moha is like delusion, and samohat is, exaggerated illusion. Complete delusion, as Prabhupada translates it. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So here we see a causal relationship between sneha and moha. So who is Yudhishthira having sneha or attachment for? He's having attachment for his friends, the people that he had to kill, which were his family members on the other side of the battle. And because of that affection, he's being put into moha. Now, it's only seen as a one word to one word change. Here, Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna disambiguates a little more. How is it that attachment becomes delusion? And so he's explaining that our consciousness looks at an object. Our conscious looks at anything. And our consciousness becomes colored or painted with the colors of what we're looking at. So in the case of Yudhishthira Maharaj, he's looking at his family, right? And so consciousness is being painted by the conception of my family, right? So who am I? Well, I'm Yudhishthira Maharaj. I'm the older brother of Arjuna. I'm the king. I have just killed all these people. And now my family. So this consciousness right now is being painted with the colors of I and mine. Or in other words, ahankara. So ahankara literally means I am the doer. Aham means I, and kara means to do. So ahankara is not just a fancy word for false ego. It's a qualification of that false ego believes that it's acting. So when you believe that you're acting independently from Krishna, independently from the divine will, you are now in a false sense of identity. Your identity is not linked in yoga with Krishna. And so in that state of disconnection, you believe that you're something independent. I am a king, I am the husband of someone else, I am the owner of a dog, as opposed to I am Krishna Das. Jivara Swarupahai Krishnera Nityadas. That's the eternal position of the living entity. That's its dharma. Its dharma is to identify and to recognize itself as being always related to Krishna. But in this position, it's The living entity is not performing its dharma by seeing itself in relation to other people. So in that condition, moha arises. In that condition, delusion happens because of attachment. I'm attached to my position as a householder. I'm attached to my position as a king. Imagine. I'm attached to my family members. And because of this attachment, now my consciousness, delusion is a simple word for not seeing things the way that they are. It doesn't mean, some drug trip and somebody is having an outer body experience or is seeing a building upside down. It simply means not seeing the world in the proper way. And what's seeing the world in a proper way? In the Bhagavatam, Krishna says, "Eva sam evagre." Anything that you see that is apparently not in relationship to me, you should know that that's my Maya. That's my illusory energy. So, not seeing that this is Krishna's will was that this would happen. I was simply carrying out Krishna's service, and my victory is in being his devotee. It is not in winning a lot of land or winning prestige. That doesn't have anything to do with me. So that would be the proper position. Now, if you look at the word sneha, Veda base has a very nice feature that it highlights all the words in the word for word transliteration. And if you click sneha, you will see that sneha usually, or at least it refers to a lot as material affection. So when somebody has attachment for their lost child, or when somebody has attachment for their wife or their husband, or, it's usually used in that way. It's used as affection. But there's a very special mention of the word in the 10th canto. Sneha is used in this relation. It is Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 11th chapter, verse 20. The verse is following. My dear Maharaj Parikshit, because of intense love and affection, Mother Jashoda, Krishna's mother, considered Krishna, who was at the peak of all opulences, to be her own son. Thus, she took Krishna by the hand, along with Balaram, and brought them home, where she performed her duties by fully bathing them, dressing them, and feeding them. Prabhupada comments, Krishna is always neat, clean, and opulent, and does not need to be washed, bathed, or dressed. Yet, Mother Jashoda, because of affection, sneha, considered him her ordinary child and did her duties to keep her son brilliant. The word used is sneha nibadhadi. So this is D usually means intelligence. Dhiras tatra namuhyati, buddhi yoga. D is intelligence. And badha, like nitya badha, is to be eternally captured. Karma bandhana means to be captured by karma. So sneha nibadhadi is to have a person's intelligence captured or bound by affection. It's a very beautiful word. And Prabhupada translates it as because of an intense spirit of love. So we see that we are always captured in some way by sneha. We always feel some affection. We either feel affection as we do right now for Krishna's external energy, and we're fascinated with the idea of independence, and we're fascinated with this material world and the gunas, the material modes. And because of this affection for the material world, we are deluded to become further implicated in it. And so we believe more and more crazy things. If you think about the development of the Srimad Bhagavatam explains very nicely the development of the material world, and how the senses develop, and how the material objects develop, and how it's all rooted on the identity of being separate from Krishna. You see where we are right now in 2020, and it's so great to have 1 million followers, or to have a sponsorship on TikTok, or to be the president of a company, or to be the president of a country. or, you know, to just be famous, to come out with a famous song. It's just the degree to which we've taken our affection for the material world, and the degree to which we're deluded, that like in 2015, the UN put out a report that animal farming contributes to more greenhouse gases than all transportation put together. But still, there are some environmentalists that don't mention the woes and the horror of animal farming. So think about this. They do have an attachment or an affection for the material world, but it's not so much. It's that affection is not so much that the delusion that they are contributing to, what to speak of greenhouse gases, but to killing of innocent living beings. The affection is not enough that they can see through that delusion, because still the point is that ultimately that affection is still based on the material body. And this is why sometimes devotees are criticized for what is called, erroneously is called, spiritual bypassing. You know, there's there's constant upheavals in the material world. There's constant political, there's constant agricultural and economic upheavals in the world, and there's, because this is not our natural place, that we are always meeting some friction. If that friction does not inspire us to abandon our sneha for the material world, to abandon our affection, there's no reason why that same affection, the seed of affection for this material world, won't turn into another flower of delusion for believing in some other thing. You know, people become disenchanted with communism, and so, okay, maybe socialism, and disenchanted with that, okay, maybe capitalism. But now people become disenchanted with capitalism. Where do they go? Capitalism was, you know, invented by the Greeks some 1,500 years ago, and no other system of government has been invented since then. So people don't know where to go anymore. That's it. That's all we have. Well, now it's anarchy, and that's it. So they, you know, as long as we're still thinking, as long as our intelligence is still based on the material platform, we will never come up with a solution that will satisfy us, because our attachment for the temporary will always lead to the fact that the temporary is not compatible with the eternal. But, you know, so what do? Do we abandon our attachment? Like do we just say, I will not be attached to anything. Everything will become void now, because, you know, attachment has to lead to delusion. Always. You will always accept something that is not true because of your intense love. That's the way that it is. The dog, for example. Prabhupada explained once that, you know, if you love me, you will love my dog. And so I love my wife, and so I love her dog. And so, you know, the sneha, my attachment for my partner is now spilling over into the dog. And I'm seeing, okay, yes, this is a wonderful dog. She's so cute when she lays on her back and she puts her legs up. And so again, moha, again, I'm deluded. And so how can I save myself from delusion? I just want to see the world as it really is. And Bhagavatam, of course, gives the answer. In the 10th canto, here it's explained that Jashoda tam ashesha shekaram matva sutam sneha nibhada dir nripa. That because of intense affection for Krishna, Mother Jashoda saw the supreme person, the cause of all causes, as her own son. And she thought, well, what does a mother do? A mother has to bathe her child and clean him, make sure he looks neat, and dress him. So, but that's not a bad type of delusion, is it? It's a delusion that has to do with the absolute truth. This is a delusion that does not have to do with the absolute truth. So there's a friction in this type of delusion. But a delusion that has to do with the absolute truth is actually still part of the absolute truth. That's how the contradiction of how can delusion and the absolute truth exist in one? It exists by being deluded into thinking that, yes, you're the friends of Krishna. When they beat Krishna at tug of war, Krishna has to carry them on his shoulders. So that's a type of delusion, thinking yourself equal to the supreme person, the supreme personality of Godhead. What's more is thinking that Krishna, the person from whom all apple seeds, all pumpkin seeds, all, grapefruits and strawberries, and the person who's the source of all cows, which make all milk, which make all yogurts and ice creams, the person who's the source of all foods and all foodstuffs and all ingredients for foodstuffs, you think he's going to be hungry if I don't make him milk, if I don't boil milk for him. What is the affection that Yashoda Mai has for Krishna? And so that's what the Bhagavatam is here for. The Bhagavatam is here to show us that everything that exists in the world exists. It's okay. It's good. It comes from God. It comes from Krishna. Now let me show you the correct combination of these things. That's all that Bhagavatam is doing. It's not condemning anything. Well, according to the Bhagavatam itself, it's condemning trying to cheat Krishna. It's condemning trying to get something out of the world that is not devotional service. The Bhagavatam very clearly says in the beginning, all cheating types of religions are abandoned. The only thing that we're interested in is pure devotional service to Krishna. Anything else you can get anywhere else. But this book will deal exclusively with devotional service to Krishna. So that's the only thing that Bhagavatam is condemning. But if you know what devotional service is, then there's nothing that's left out. Everything is there. You have your relationships with your friends. You have parental relationships. You have conjugal relationships. You have sharing food, sharing presents. Christmas is every day in Goloka Vrindavan. Every day is giving food and receiving and presents and making jokes. So nothing is left out. So that Bhagavatam wants to do that. It wants to show us what the proper application of all the different facets of the world are. It says you have attachment. Now just direct it toward Krishna, beginning with Krishna's holy name, beginning with these literatures, beginning with the pure devotees. Develop attachment for the pure devotees. Develop attachment for Arjuna, for Yudhishthir, for what their attachment is for Krishna. Develop attachment for Queen Kunti. Try to understand her prayers and try to understand the motivations behind the pure devotees. Because if you see that, then a path opens up. In the same way that role models in this material world show us the path to get from A to B. Elon Musk showed us, a crazy way of inventing an app, PayPal, to creating rockets that go to the moon. So he shows you a path. He's a trailblazer, right? The devotees are trailblazers to Goloka Vrindavan. They show us what's the path to the spiritual world. They've done it. It's not unheard of. It's not impossible anymore. A pure devotee has done it. Dhruva Maharaj, an 8-year-old child. I wanted to get into the process of devotional service, and I'll just touch on it very quickly. That the devotional process begins with hearing and chanting, and then meditating on. And you'll see that the material world employs the same process to strengthen affection for the material world. You hear commercials all the time about buying medicine, about buying a new car, about buying clothing, about buying this, about buying that. You hear all the time about people, how they're so happy that they're famous now. They're so happy that they get to share the world, their music and all that stuff. And then kirtan. So first you hear and then you repeat kirtan. You say, yeah, for Christmas, I really want to get a Nintendo Switch. It seems like, my favorite musician is enjoying the Nintendo Switch. Or why can't I be a billionaire like Bezos? Even if it wasn't a billion, maybe just a million. What's the harm in that? And then you meditate on it. Smaranam, you're thinking all the time, how can I do this? So the material world has enough agents working for it that are preaching the glories, the glories of the material world. And what we are required to do is to now preach the glories of devotional service. If there are not devotees that are talking about this, then the other souls in the material world really are not free. Because to choose between right wing or left wing, to choose between democracy or socialism, to choose between, environmentalism or not, is really just a different aspect of the material world. It's all attachment for something temporary. So it's not really free. It's like saying someone, do you want to be in a room with full of lava with a toothbrush or with a box of Pringles? And you can think, well, I'm hungry, so Pringles is really good. And someone else can think, well, I have bad breath, and so a toothbrush is really good. But the problem is that you're in a room full of lava. And so neither of those things are a cure for your situation. They're temporary. They're just temporary. So no one is free to really choose until they have a spiritual option. And so that's what the Bhagavatam wants to do. It wants to broadcast the true freedom of the spiritual soul, which is to serve Krishna again and not to serve an illusory phantasmagoria. Very well. If there were any mistakes in what I've said, please correct me. If there was any good in what you've heard, then all of that belongs to my spiritual masters. Thank you so much. If anyone has any reflections, if any devotees have any reflections on these verses or personal realizations, please share them. Hare Krishna. Or any questions about any of the points?
Hi, Krishna Prabhuji. I was just waiting for Jess Sachidanand Prabhu to go ahead, but I think I'll just take the opportunity. I'll grab that from him. As usual, wonderful class. Thank you for explaining it so nicely and making it so understandable for us and giving your perspective on it. I think one of my highlights is how you said seed of attachment leads to flower of delusion. Fantastic. We can really share that with people. It's something that they can understand and they can actually see that happen, right? So that's beautiful. Thank you for saying it. I also really like the fact that now that we're all in, at least the rest of our society is in the whole holiday mode. So I really liked how you said Christmas is every day in Vrindavan, even in our lives, right? Every day, dadati patigrahnati guhyamakati prachuti. We all share these 6 loving exchanges and we gift each other. Like we don't look at an occasion. Oh, we're meeting. Okay, let's get something for this person. Yeah. Oh, they're coming over. Let's prepare some nice prasad for them and even for our deities also. So, oh, today's Dinada's day. Let's prepare something tasty. Oh, I saw the recipe. So thank you for that.
Let's call honey lips.
Yeah. Also, I'd like to take this opportunity to appreciate your friend Andrew here. Hi, Andrew. We met during their wedding. I think for me, this whole process has been like taken for granted. I knew who Yudhishthira Maharaj's Kunti Maharani is like from birth because of hearing it over and over again. But for him to come and hear this and try to understand it and take that effort, it's laudable. So thank you so much, Andrew, for taking this step. And you're actually really blessed that you have such nice friends like Ali and Diego. So, Hare Krishna.
Hari Hari.
He says Jai to everyone in the chat. So see, now you've changed the way he speaks. All glories. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hari. Yeah, I'm reading. I just finished the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Rupa Goswami, and he's describing the Bhakti Lata Bij, and so I was captivated by that image of the seed. That it's so small, it's such a small thing and so delicate, and Krishna and the Guru give it to you, and the idea of watering it every day, it makes it but that he explains that we have to learn how to discern it from other seeds that look just like it. So that's been a very nice meditation for me, and so I appreciate that you called attention to it, because that I think it's manageable to know that it begins like a seed. It's a really small thing, and and even Krishna he says that it should be chopped down with the sword of knowledge, the big forest of delusion, but all of it still begins with a seed. So yeah, it's a good image. It's a powerful image that Krishna gave.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much.
Prabhu.
The expansion of the purport and the verse. I appreciate the point of attachment in the material world and attachment in the spiritual world. So that was very nice. Something that I've heard devotees speaking about, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, is this idea of detached caring. Have you contemplated that aspect of how does a devotee understand this idea of detached caring and implement it? Do you want to? It's not exactly what's being stated in this verse, but I think it's an expansion of this because, for example, if you look at the example of Duryodhan, Dhritarashtra, he has affection for Duryodhan. And he demonstrates that by a particular type of caring. And likewise, Vidur has affection and attachment for Dhritarashtra. And he shows that affection by leaving Hastinapur. So, one being an example of detached caring, with Vidura cares so much about Dhritarashtra that he was able to detach himself and leave the scene. And Dhritarashtra, being so affectionate and attached to his son, yet not being able to do that detached caring sort of aspect. You see where I'm coming from?
Yes.
Do you want to expand? Can you expand?
I appreciate your invitation to do so. It reminds me of in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, two verses come to mind. The first verse is Krishna says that I am not attached to the fruits of action. One who knows this about me is similarly performs their duty in an unattached way. And the second verse is where Krishna just says that in the same way that smoke covers fire, imperfection is kind of born with every activity. Detached affection, I think that I would like to be a good partner to my wife. I know that my wife is being taken care of Krishna before I met her and will continue to be taken care of after I'm not with her anymore. Now Krishna is giving me an opportunity to serve, but Krishna is not attached to the fruit of action. So that means that I have to do my level best. I have to do my level best to, be a good partner, but I have to do it within the boundaries of Dharma. So if, maybe she wants, and she doesn't, but, if she says like, no, I want you to fast for me. Instead of Ekadasi, I want you to do one fast per month for me, because that's fair. Well, I would detachedly be affectionate by saying, I haven't read that anywhere. I don't think that that's going to help. So, I'm sorry. But yeah, I think remembering that we want to serve people because we're servants of Krishna. Our reward is being devotees. Our reward is not people recognizing that we are good, right? Or it's not that somebody says, oh, I love you so much because you did this good thing for me. The reward is that finally Krishna is letting me serve him. I need to make sure that my deities are happy. I look for them to smile. But if somebody doesn't smile, I'm not your servant eternally. And if it didn't work out well, I'm really sorry. I don't know if anyone can do that kind of detached affection if they're not feeling bliss from devotional service and chanting. I think that this is why waking up in the morning and chanting japa very early is important. This has to be kind of the first affection that we reach for, has to be affection for the holy name. And then when if we have sufficient, even if it's not attachment to the holy name, attachment to the instruction of our spiritual master to be attached to the holy name, then that is sufficient for, I think, mitigating some of our attachments, our undue attachments to anyone else, is what I would say about that. Is that correct?
Thank you. I always, think about this idea of detached caring. I think that's a nice explanation. I like I understood the analogy that of Krishna being detached from his creation. We do something, in devotional service, and we immediately start thinking, "Oh, how wonderful we are!" There's so many examples. Krishna's amazing quality is having so much affection, yet not being detached to the process of being attached to the person or the soul, but not being attached necessarily to the externals. You brought up some nice analogies and explanations, and there's always this idea of, like Lord Ram talks to Vibhishan about everything coming through the spoke of the wheel, and if one attaches to the spoke of the wheel, then all other relationships are fulfilled. So, and here Srila Prabhupada talks, so thank you for that. And in this verse, Srila Prabhupada, appropriately so, or Bhagavatam explains, overwhelmed by death of his friends, the Surdham. But I think Yudhishthira Maharaj, many places it explains how he had such compassion that he was overwhelmed by the death of all the souls on the bed, or death of all the, not just friends and the Pandavas, but the Kauravas as well. It shows how Krishna was very, very selective on whom he gave such instructions to. They have to have that capacity, to withstand such tremendous suffering, and yet act with that attachment to Krishna. What a glorious personality Yudhishthira Maharaj is. Thank you. And I really like you did, I really like that last sentence, that Srila Prabhupada has, that there's a great idea behind his delusion. He would be instructed by Bhishma as Arjuna was instructed by the Lord himself. I really like that statement by Srila Prabhupada. Thank you. Welcome, Andrew. You have a wonderful friend in Diego Prabhu. I've never met you, but once temple opens up, then please give us your association as circumstances allow. So thank you, Diogo.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu.
Would others like to add? Ask questions, etc. So if not, I just want to make a couple of announcements. One is that Diego Prabhu just informed me that his Guru Maharaj has granted him the great fortune of receiving